everyone, welcome back to Velvet Moments. Have you ever felt that in the middle of a grand concert, filled with dazzling lights, perfectly structured choreography and thousands of voices cheering, there's something far more powerful than the performance itself? Something that can't simply be explained as just an interaction. Because what we see between Park Jimin and Jungkook never really feels like an ordinary moment. There's a pattern, a quiet repetition, and somehow, it always carries the same emotional weight. In this video, we're not just looking at what's obvious. We're paying attention to the smallest details. The lingering glances, the subtle shifts in expression, the unconscious movements that seem too consistent to be accidental. Because often the most honest moments are not the loudest ones, but the ones that happen naturally without intention. When you observe closely, what happens between Jimin and Jungkook feels difficult to define with simple terms. Not because we need to label it, but because it carries a depth that goes beyond what we usually recognize as ordinary friendship. Feels softer, deeper, and somehow more real. Every time they share the same space, there's a noticeable shift in energy. It's not always dramatic, not always obvious, but it's there. Even on the massive, carefully structured stage of BTS, where every movement is planned, there are small cracks where something genuine slips through. What's even more interesting is when they are placed far apart. Different positions, different paths, as if physical distance could create a boundary. But ironically, that's when the unexpected begins to show. No matter how busy Jungkook is, his gaze almost always finds its way back to the same place. As if there's a focal point he simply can't ignore. And on the other side, Jimin's reactions subtly shift whenever Jungkook is near. His smile softens, becoming warmer, more alive. And the moment that distance disappears, everything changes. Not just physically but emotionally. There's a sense of release, as if something unspoken finally flows freely. Their dynamic becomes more relaxed, more open, and undeniably more genuine. Even their smallest interactions never feel ordinary. Simple conversations turn into genuine laughter. Not the kind meant for the camera, but something spontaneous and uncontrollable. The kind of laughter that only happens when someone feels truly at ease. Then there are the tiny details. The ones people often overlook yet speak the loudest. A hand moving closer without thinking. A brief touch that happens too often to be coincidence. Playful teasing that leads to subtle physical closeness. Everything feels effortless. As if they move in the same rhythm without needing to agree on it. But what stands out the most isn't just what they do, it's what they radiate. Jungkook appears lighter, more relaxed, as if he doesn't have to hold anything back. Meanwhile, Jimin carries a consistent warmth, a quiet, genuine happiness that feels completely natural. They don't just share moments, they seem to complete them. It's no surprise that reactions to this vary. Some see it as strong, undeniable chemistry. Others try to rationalize it. But regardless of interpretation, one thing remains consistent. These moments keep happening. In the same way. With the same feeling. As if something simply cannot be hidden. No matter how much the situation tries to contain it. Because in the end, something real always finds its way out. Through a glance that lingers just a little longer. Through a smile that appears without reason. Through the way they seem to look for each other, without making it obvious. Looking at the bigger picture, these moments also exist within a much larger context. BTS's comeback isn't just another project. It's a significant phase filled with global pressure and expectations. After a long hiatus, they returned carrying more than just the need to perform. They came back to prove that they are still relevant, still powerful, and still evolving. And within that pressure, these small, unplanned moments become even more meaningful. Because sincerity often reveals itself when no one is trying. Like during the Pied Piper concert when Jungkook smiled warmly at a little girl in the crowd. A brief but deeply genuine moment. Or when Jimin casually helped Kim Namjoon with what looked like an injury, which turned out to be just confetti, turning concern into a light-hearted interaction that showed their natural care for one another. On another part of the stage, there was a subtle yet telling moment. Jungkook seemed to be looking for Jimin, while Jimin was completely immersed in his own world, adorably unaware. That small contrast made their dynamic feel even more real. And then, there was one moment that stood out the most. When Jungkook gently reached out and touched Jimin's hair. The movement was slow. Careful. Almost instinctive. And afterward he simply looked at him. A calm, quiet gaze, yet filled with something difficult to explain. What makes it even more fascinating is Jimin's reaction. Completely natural. Completely unbothered. As if moments like that are simply normal between them. And maybe that's where the beauty lies. Nothing feels exaggerated. Nothing feels forced. Everything just flows. The second day of the concert felt warmer, more emotional, more alive. Not just because of the performance but because of the small, fleeting details that slowly build a bigger picture. A glance. A gesture. A spontaneous moment. All these fragments come together to form something that's hard to define, yet easy to feel. And maybe after seeing all of this, there's no need to rush into labeling it. Because what feels real doesn't need long explanations. It simply exists. It shows itself. And it keeps repeating, telling its own story in its own way. If you felt the same way watching these moments, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story from Velvet Moments. See you in the next video, Purple Heart.
Everything, so we could keep this on. Thank you for welcoming us, with such a warm heart and joy. We'll remember this night forever.